What's up, Florida gardener? Here's the most important thing that I think new Florida gardeners should know. If you're new here to the Sunshine State, I'm sure you've probably figured out it's pretty different. Florida's just different. Maybe you moved here from up north and tried planting tomatoes in May, or maybe you just stuck some seeds in the ground, crossed your fingers, and hoped for the best. And you probably quickly watched things fizzle out. Trust me, I've been there. We've all been there. I'm Josh. I've been gardening in Florida for a little over 10 years now. I've fought a lot of weeds, have gotten some good fruits and veggies from the garden. So here's what I think the single most important thing new Florida gardeners needs to know and get right. And it's not the fanciest fertilizer. It's not the perfect tool or anything like that. It is planting things at the exact right time. The absolute key to making your gardening life way easier here is timing. Knowing when to plant what, based on where you live in Florida, is crucial. Getting the timing right, and you're halfway to success. Get it wrong, well, you're basically gardening on hard mode. Battling heat, humidity, pests, sometimes even freezes that your plants just aren't equipped to handle. So today we're going to talk about Florida's growing zones and seasons. Let's figure out exactly when you should be planting your vegetables. All right, first things first, Florida isn't just one big tropical paradise when it comes to gardening. We need to break it down. Think of Florida in three main climate regions: north, central, and south. Your timing is going to depend heavily on which region you're in. All right, let's start up north. We're talking about USDA zones 8B and 9A. These places actually see average winter lows dip down into the 15 to 20 degree range. That's chilly. Zone 9A covers a bigger area though, including places like Tallahassee, Pensacola, Gainesville, Lake City, and parts of Jacksonville and Panama City. Geographically, this feels a bit more like the deep south. You got a little bit of rolling hills, some pine forests, big rivers like the Suwannee, and actually distinct winters here. They're cool with regular frosts, even hard freezes, especially inland. Those freezes are kind of like the big boss levels for the gardeners up there. They dictate your schedule for tender plants. Summers, though, hot, humid, classic thunderstorms. Because of those colder winters, North Florida has a shorter main growing season compared to the rest of the state. You got to be pickier about cold hardy plants if you want year-round green, and paying attention to those first and last frost dates is non-negotiable. You got to be on point with those. But those near the edge, like Jacksonville and parts of Ocala, your timing might shift just a little bit. So just use these as kind of a starting point. You're in a transition area that timing can be slightly different. Okay, though, let's move to Central Florida. Mostly Zone 9B, also kind of a transition area between the two parts of Florida. That's like Orlando, Tampa, St. Pete. Some of those coastal areas, though, Tampa and St. Pete, are a little bit warmer, more like areas in zones 10A. Lots of folks live here, heavily populated areas. This region is a lot flatter with more lakes, sand hills, pine flatwoods. Think like, the I-4 corridor. The weather, though, still humid, subtropical. Winters are generally mild and sunny, kind of glorious, really. It's probably why a bunch of people move here. But don't get too comfortable. Occasional frosts and light freezes can and do happen, especially if you're more inland, away from the coast or big lakes. They're less severe than up north, but they can still zap some sensitive plants. So summers, though, hot, long, humid, wet. June to September stretch means almost daily afternoon thunderstorms. It's really nice at first and gets a little annoying. But the good news, Central Florida has a very long growing season. The challenge, though, is really that intense summer heat and humidity. But we'll talk about that and how to work around with that a little bit later. Again, if you live near the coast, like in Clearwater or further south, towards like maybe Sarasota or Bradenton, right on that line near the Palm Bay or Melbourne, you might lean slightly warmer even, pushing into 10A territory. giving you a bit more wiggle room, I suppose, with the cold. All right, South Florida. Today, 10B towards zone 11, even in the Keys. This is where things get really tropical or pretty close to it. Think super flat land, the Everglades, coastal ridges, cities like Fort Myers, Naples, West Palm Beach, Port St. Lucie, and 10A, and then Miami, Fort Lauderdale, Boca Raton, further south in the even warmer 10B region. So geographically here is dominated by the coast, the Everglades, proximity to warm ocean waters, winters. What winters? They are incredibly mild and mostly dry. Frost is rare in 10A, especially near the coast, and almost unheard of in 10B. This means you can grow stuff pretty much year round that folks up north can only dream of. Summers, however, are intense, long, hot, very humid with a serious rainy season. And of course, hurricane season. That's a real thing. It's freaking scary. But gardening down here is almost flipped. So the best time to grow many traditional vegetables is actually the fall, winter, and spring. Summer is often the toughest time because of that heat and rain, resulting in lots of pests and diseases. So things though, like cities like Sarasota that might be on that cusp might see slight overlaps between 10A and 10B, depending on how close to the water you actually are. Okay, so the zone breakdown is complete. You should have a better idea of where you kind of fit in into the state of Florida. Now, let's connect that to when to plant. That's when the real magic starts to happen. Let's start with North Florida. Really, they have three distinct times. They have a spring, they have a summer, and they have a fall. So the spring season is roughly March to May. Your frost danger is usually past you by early March. This is the prime time to get those warm season favorites in the ground. Tomatoes, peppers, beans, squash, corn. Get them growing before that real heat hits. And here's a little side note. When I say these things need to be in the ground, that means you either need to plant seeds directly into the ground or have transplants ready to go. I highly recommend starting transplants for things like tomatoes and peppers, eggplant, these warm season things that really kind of take a long time to get going. Those usually need to be between 6 to 8 weeks old in order to go into the garden. So if you're planting them in March, you should be starting those seeds as transplants in January. Okay, let's talk about the summer season. June to early September. It's going to be hot, humid, and rainy. Lots of your traditional vegetables are going to struggle. So you're going to have to focus on things like okra, sweet potatoes, black-eyed peas. Some peppers can handle it and eggplants can also. But summertime is pretty difficult to grow in really a lot of the parts of the state. North Florida probably has the easiest time growing in the summertime. But there's definitely a smaller list of things to grow in the summer than compared to spring and fall. So let's talk about fall a little bit. That is like your fall season up in North Florida. It's like late August/September to November. This is your second big planting window, really. As the heat starts to break, you can sneak in another round of warm season stuff. Hoping that they finish before the first frost arrives, which is usually like early-ish December. But more importantly, this is when you can plant a lot of your cool season veggies: broccoli, cabbage, kale, collards, lettuce, onions, garlic. These guys will thrive in the mild winter. So that's kind of your planting zones in North Florida. Let's talk about Central Florida. All right, so let's talk about Central Florida's growing seasons, starting with spring. This is late February to March into May. You get a slightly earlier start than North Florida, usually safe from frost by mid to late February. You can go crazy with your warm season stuff, tomatoes, peppers, eggplants, beans, cucumbers, melons. And, just like with North Florida, this applies to all zones, not just North Florida. Well, your warm season crops should be in the ground at the beginning of this period, at the beginning of March. So same thing, start your transplants, about 2 months before you're looking to get them into the ground. So for the spring season, that can be, December to January. So what about summer in Central Florida? Can you grow stuff in summer? That's that period between June and September, like up north, but maybe even more intense heat and humidity can be a little challenging. Stick to the heat tolerant stuff again: okra, sweet potatoes, southern peas, maybe some Malabar spinach or some Seminole pumpkins. These are pest and disease resistant, and that is key right now. But my favorite time to garden is fall. That's late September to February. Arguably Central Florida's prime time. Between that late September to November, you can be planting warm season veggies that maybe struggled in the summer, like beans and cucumbers. And you can start your cool season crops: broccoli, cauliflower, kale, lettuce, spinach, carrots, beets, onions, peas, strawberries. That kind of leads into the winter, the December to February, where your cool season crops will still be loving life. Keep planting successions of leafy greens and root veggies. So that kind of wraps up Central Florida. Heading on to South Florida. Zones 10A and 10B, heading into zones 11, springtime, February to April, May. Since winter is so mild, this season kind of blends in, honestly. It's really a continuation of the main growing season down in South Florida. It's a great time for warm season crops before the summer really hits, which is in like May, June, all the way to like September, October. Typically the off season for many traditional veggies, intense heat, humidity, rains, pests, diseases. It's a lot. Many gardeners focus on soil building, planting, or growing like true tropical edibles like cassava, taro, like super heat adapted stuff. Okra again, sweet potatoes, Everglades tomatoes grow pretty good. Hurricane preparedness is also kind of usually part of the summer routine, I would say. But the main season is this fall winter. That's October to like February, March. This is when South Florida really shines for vegetable gardening. The weather is gorgeous, warm, sunny, less rainy. This is when you grow what the rest of the country calls like summer vegetables. Tomatoes, peppers, beans, squash, cucumbers, corn, plus cool season lovers like lettuce, kale, carrots. They do great. This is really the time to kind of shine in South Florida. All right. That was a lot of information I just threw at you, I know. But do you see how different it all is? North Florida is a different thing than South Florida. It focuses more on spring and fall, dodging freezes and summer heat, where Central Florida has a long season, but leans heavily into fall, winter, and spring. And South Florida basically flips the script, making fall through spring the main event really there. Getting this timing right makes such a difference. Now, remembering all this can be a little tricky, especially when life gets busy. That's why I put together a monthly email newsletter. Just send it to you once a month. I send out a quick reminder about what you could be planting in your part of Florida right now or at that time. Plus, I share what's just going on in our garden. The successes, the failures, there's a lot of those, and the lessons that I kind of learned along the way. It's a super simple way to stay on track. If that sounds helpful, there's a link down in the description where you can sign up. It is totally free. Just a little gardening nudge from me to you. Okay, so we've established that timing is king or queen in the Florida garden. Getting that right sets you up for success more than almost anything. But there's one more piece of the puzzle that will make your life even easier, especially as a beginner. And that is choosing Florida-friendly varieties. Just like timing, not all vegetable types are created equal. When faced with our unique conditions, planting a heat-tolerant tomato variety at the right time is way easier than trying to baby a variety meant for cooler climates that just doesn't have our pressures. Even if you nail the timing, that's still going to be a little bit tough. The next video, I'll be diving into the best vegetable varieties to grow in Florida. I'll share some specific tried and true winners that can handle our heat, humidity, and pests. You definitely don't want to miss it. it'll be helpful, I think. I'll put a link somewhere around here in the description where you can find it. And I also really, really hope this one helps, and I hope to see you in that one.